How Reverend Ezekiel Dochumo escaped genocide and kidnappers in northern Nigeria. It was supposed to be a peaceful evening, but peace had long fled from the land. The moon hid behind the clouds, and the air smelled of smoke and blood. Across northern Nigeria, entire Christian villages were being wiped out, one by one. But on this night, one man's faith would defy fear, and his obedience would rewrite death itself. His name was Reverend Ezekiel Dochumo, a pastor who refused to run, even when hell broke loose at his doorstep. He didn't know that before the dawn, his church would burn, his friends would die, and he would be hunted, not once, but twice. Yet through it all, God would prove that his voice still speaks in the fire. For 15 years, Reverend Ezekiel Dochumo pastored a small Deeper Life church in Gwoza, Borno State, one of the most dangerous places in Nigeria to be a Christian. While many fled south to safety, Ezekiel stayed behind, preaching love to both Christians and Muslims. "If the Lord called me here," he often said, "then no man can drive me away." He was known for his humility, walking miles to pray for the sick, sharing food with the poor, and comforting widows whose husband had fallen to the violence. But beneath his calm faith, the storm was rising. It was late at night, around 10:45 p.m. The air was still, the sky quiet. Then suddenly, gunfire. Shouts. Explosions. The attackers had come. Armed men flooded the village, shooting anyone who ran. Ezekiel rushed to his knees. His wife and children screamed. The church bell rang once, then fell silent. The whole town was engulfed in fire. "Burn the pastor's house," one of them shouted. The men laughed. Ezekiel's heart pounded. He had seen death before, but not like this. He knelt, holding his Bible, whispering, "Lord, if this is my last breath, let it glorify you." Then, through the chaos, came a still small voice. "Get up, Ezekiel. Leave now. Do not look back." Without hesitation, he obeyed. He pushed his family through the back door and ran into the darkness. Behind them, gunshots echoed. His home went up in flames. The attackers entered his compound, but they never saw him. A mysterious mist had risen across the field. Ezekiel later said it was as though an invisible hand covered them. They ran through the bush for hours, barefoot, hungry, terrified. Ezekiel carried his youngest daughter on his back while reciting Psalm 91 under his breath. At dawn, they found shelter under a large tree. They drank rainwater and prayed. By the second night, the voice came again. "Go south. Help is waiting for you." They walked until they reached a small Christian village, where local believers took them in. They were safe, or so they thought. Barely 3 weeks after the attack, while helping distribute food to other displaced families, Ezekiel was kidnapped by armed men. They dragged him from the camp and drove off into the forest. 4 days, he was beaten, tied, and mocked for his faith. They demanded he renounce Christ and convert, or die. Ezekiel refused. His lips cracked, his body bruised, but his spirit remained firm. He told his captors, "Even if you kill me, my blood will preach louder than my voice." One of the younger militants, touched by his courage, secretly untied him one night. Whispering, he said, "Go, old man. You are not meant to die here." Ezekiel escaped again, this time running barefoot through the forest, guided only by moonlight and the memory of that voice. "Do not look back." He wandered for 2 days before stumbling into a Christian camp in Adamawa. Exhausted, scarred, and weak, he fell to the ground, weeping. But even in his pain, he prayed for his kidnappers. "Lord," he prayed, "open their eyes. Forgive them. They know not what they do." Months later, Ezekiel returned home. What he saw shattered his heart. His church, once filled with laughter, songs, and children, was now a heap of ashes. The pulpit was gone. The cross had fallen. Burnt Bibles lay scattered in the dust. He fell on his knees and cried until his voice broke. "Lord," he whispered, "if this is all that's left, I'll still worship you here." And he did. On a Sunday morning, he gathered the few survivors, 10 women, 3 men, and a handful of children. There were no chairs, no instruments, no roof. Just an open sky, ashes, and tears. As they stood on the blackened ground, Ezekiel opened what was left of his burnt Bible and began to sing softly, "It is well with my soul, it is well with my soul." One by one, voices joined in. Weak at first, then louder, then unshakable. The The same ground where blood had been spilled now echoed with praise. That service marked a new beginning. Word spread that the pastor had returned to worship in the ashes. Soon, more survivors came, barefoot, broken, yet hungry for hope. Together, they rebuilt, stone by stone, prayer by prayer. With the help of believers from across Nigeria, the church began to rise again. A new cross was raised. The children sang louder. Every brick carried a memory, every song carried a tear. Ezekiel preached forgiveness instead of revenge. He refused to hate those who had burned his home. He said, "If we fight with hate, we lose what makes us Christians. Love is our only weapon." His message reached far beyond Gwoza. Even journalists came to hear the story of the pastor who prayed in the ashes. But the story didn't end there. One evening, months later, while visiting a nearby camp for displaced persons, Ezekiel recognized one of the faces among the refugees. It was the same young man who had freed him during his kidnapping. Their eyes met. The young man fell to his knees, trembling. "Pastor," he whispered, "I was one of them, but your prayers haunted me. I couldn't sleep. I ran away. I want to follow your Jesus." Ezekiel knelt beside him, tears streaming down his face. "Son," he said, "you were once my enemy, but now you are my brother." That night, under the open sky, Ezekiel baptized him in a nearby stream. The same water that once quenched his thirst during his escape became the water of a new birth. That young man would later help rebuild the very church he once tried to destroy. Reverend Ezekiel's testimony is only one among thousands. Across northern and central Nigeria, persecution continues, silent but deadly. From Benue to Plateau, from Yobe to Taraba, Christians are still being slaughtered for their faith. Open Doors reports that Nigeria accounts for almost 80% of all Christian killings worldwide. Thousands of churches have been burned. Yet, amidst the ashes, the Church of Christ in Nigeria continues to rise. "They can burn our buildings," Ezekiel says, "but they cannot burn our faith." Every week, survivors gather in destroyed villages, singing songs of victory where death once reigned. Their hymn is simple. "Though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil, for God is with us." Years later, Reverend Ezekiel was invited to a reconciliation meeting between Christian leaders and repentant militants. One of the leaders of the attack that destroyed his church stood before him, trembling. "I burned your church," the man confessed. "I killed your people. Will you ever forgive me?" Ezekiel's eyes filled with tears. He stepped forward, embraced the man, and whispered, "Christ forgave me too. So yes, I forgive you." The hall fell silent. Hardened men began to weep. That moment became a turning point. Several former fighters gave their lives to Christ that very day. What hatred had built, love destroyed. Today, Reverend Ezekiel Dochumo still lives and ministers in northern Nigeria. His rebuilt church stands as a testimony, not of survival, but of victory. Every Sunday, the congregation sings beneath a cross that glows brighter than ever before. When asked why he never left, he smiles and says, "Because sometimes God allows you to walk through fire, not to burn you, but to refine your faith so others can see his glory." He preaches now with scars on his body and peace in his heart. His story has become a beacon to millions, proof that when God's hand is upon you, no force of darkness can prevail. From ashes to altar, from pain to purpose, from blood to blessing. The genocide that sought to erase his name instead amplified his testimony. And in the land where hatred burned bright, faith now shines brighter. Reverend Ezekiel Dochumo's story reminds the world that God's people may be persecuted, but they will never be destroyed. For as it is written in Romans 8 verse 37, "In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him that loved us." Pray for Nigeria. Pray for the persecuted church.